from a man that received a phone call to meet a mysterious person, only to be disturbed at what he discovered next, to a murder that has been unsolved for over 100 years. Here's 5 dark mysteries that shook the world. 52-year-old William Wallace was scheduled to play a chess game at the Liverpool Chess Club on the evening of 19th of January 1931. When he turned up at the club, he was given a message that someone phoned up and asked for him. They requested that on the following evening, he must go to 25 Menlove Gardens East, Liverpool at 7:30 p.m. to discuss insurance with a man who has given his name as R.M. Cattrall. The next evening, William took a tram car to meet the man at 7:30. He was a complete stranger to the area and was said to have pestered the tram conductor to let him know when to get off. This is when it became quite peculiar. William found a north, south and west Menlove Gardens, but couldn't find no Menlove Gardens East. Why would a man phone to demand that William meet him at a road that doesn't actually exist? It didn't make sense. William spent just under an hour looking for this road, but to no luck. He even called it 25 Menlove Gardens West, just in case the person gave him the wrong address. He went to newsagents, he stopped people on the street, and he even asked a policeman, but no one has even heard of Mr. Cattrall or Menlove Gardens East. About 45 minutes later, William had enough and returned home. This is when he discovered that he could not enter his own house. He told his neighbours who were watching that both his front and back door were locked. They followed William to the back garden, where oddly enough his back door was now unlocked. When he entered, he found his wife, Julia, dead in the living room. She was beaten to death. It was such an horrific scene, where blood splatter was on the wall. What was the motive? William found that his locked cupboard that contained £4 was now missing. His neighbour told him not to touch nothing else and that he contacted the police and doctor. For the next few weeks, William attended the police headquarters every day where he was asked specific questions. It turned out that the phone call that was made to Mr. Wallace at the chess club was only 400 yards away from his house. It raised questions of, was Mr. Cattrall actually William Wallace? Did William make the phone call and then go to the club? Did William pay for a hitman? His wife's time of death was believed to have been just after 6:30. The police believed that William could have killed his wife and still have had enough time to make the tram for a 7:30 meeting. A local milk delivery boy told the jury that he believed he spoke to Julia Wallace just moments before William would have had to have left to catch his tram. Investigators also told the police that the killer would have likely have had her blood on their clothing due to the violent nature of her death, let alone there was no blood on William when he caught his tram. How could he have killed his wife, hide the weapon and his blood-stained clothing, get changed into his new clothing and still caught his tram, unless her time of death was wrong? The jury found William Wallace guilty of murder and sentenced him to be hanged. The appeals court though released him as they felt the verdict did not match the purely circumstantial evidence. No other person was charged with the murder, and it's still officially unsolved. Georgette was born to an oil tycoon in 1924. She lived a wealthy lifestyle where she attended a convent school to learn about goodness. When Georgette was 20 years old in 1941, she moved to West Hollywood to pursue an acting career. She found work in the Los Angeles Times and at the Hollywood Canteen, a dining and dancing club that catered for men and women in uniform. Nearly 3 million men and women in uniform visited the club in its 3 years of operation. Georgette was a junior hostess at the club where she danced with servicemen. On October 11, 1944, Georgette left the Hollywood Canteen where she jumped into her sister's car and drove home. The next morning, her maid and janitor came to her house to clean her apartment. This is where they found the door was unlocked. As they entered the house, they discovered Georgette's lifeless body face down in the bathtub with the bathwater still running. The light bulb was partially unscrewed, and the bruising on her body showed that she put up a fight with whomever murdered her. This led investigators to believe that someone was waiting for her in the darkness before the person then raped her and then killed her. A day before Georgette was murdered, she cashed out a $175 check and purchased an airline ticket to Texas. She told friends that she was going with a soldier boyfriend. That boyfriend was later identified as Private Jerome M. Brown. Her neighbour said that she heard screams at about 2:30 a.m, where he said he heard her yell, "Stop, stop, you're killing me." Thinking it might have been a family fight, he went back to bed. Even though a few soldiers who attended Hollywood Canteen were questioned, no one ever got charged for the murder. One of the suspects, a sailor from Long Beach, was said to be infatuated with her, where he would cut in on Georgette during nearly every dance on the night of her death. After Georgette was murdered, the killer used a car to get away. Their vehicle was found some distance away, abandoned and out of gas. Some believe that she was murdered by the same person who murdered Elizabeth Short, the Black Dahlia. Speculation about the murder that shocked the nation still continues over 100 years later. Lizzie Borden and her elder sister Emma had a religious upbringing where on Sundays they would go to church. Lizzie was a Sunday school teacher at the Central Congregational Church, where she talked about her faith to many children that emigrated to America. 3 years after her mother's death, her wealthy father, Andrew, married Abby Gray. Since their childhood, the relationship between the two daughters and their stepmother Abby was tense. Emma, the older sibling by 10 years, was like a mother figure to Lizzie, and they never allowed Abby to enter their life. In their view, their stepmother Abby only married their father for money. Their father might have been one of the wealthiest men in the town, but was also known for being unpleasant, and he sure didn't like to spend his wealth. It was said that he made a few enemies to get to the top of becoming the president of the largest bank in town and also owning a substantial amount of properties. Their relationship got tense when their father bought his wife's sister a house. This infuriated the sisters, who demanded that their father buy them a house. He later sold them a house for $1. The relationship didn't get any better though when their father killed the pigeons that his daughters built a roost for, because he believed his barn was now attracting local children that wanted to hunt the pigeons. The sisters were so upset that they took an extended holiday in New Bedford. It was only a week after they returned that their father and stepmother were murdered on 4th of August 1892. It was believed that the time of death was between 10:30 to 11 a.m. It was a brutal murder. Their father's eye was split in half. His nose was nearly cut off. His face was left totally unrecognisable. That morning, the father, Abby and John Morse, a house guest, were having breakfast. After breakfast, Mr. Borden and John Morse were sitting in the living room, while Abby and the maid began cleaning the house. John left the house at about 8:45 a.m. that morning, and about half an hour later, the father also left the house to post some letters. In that next hour, it's believed that Abby was killed in the guest room. Whoever murdered her hit her with 19 blows to the back of the head with a hatchet. The father returned with a small parcel and then went to the living room to rest. Lizzie was said to have visited her father while the maid went upstairs to the room to lay down. In that space of time, the father was brutally murdered. Lizzie began screaming for the maids, saying that her father has been killed. No forensic evidence was found at the crime scene. The main suspect was Lizzie Borden. She had a motive as she would get some of her father's wealth. She was said to have been seen attempting to buy some poison. That week before the Bordens were killed, they complained of pains, where Abby believed her family was being poisoned. Also, Lizzie was there in the house when the two murders took place. Questions were asked such as how did Lizzie and the maid not hear such an horrific murder? Did someone else come in the house and brutally kill the Bordens? The jury found Lizzie not guilty of murder, and no other suspects were ever questioned. British Columbia in Canada is known for its pleasant scenery, but there's also something much more sinister happening. It started in 2007 when severed feet with shoes on began to be found on shores of Jeddah Island to Botanical Beach. So far, 8 out of the 12 severed feet have been identified. Since the severed feet have been found, there have been so many theories as to why so many severed feet were being discovered. Some have said they believe it could be the work of drug dealers, a serial killer. Some have said that maybe it was the feet of the victims of the 2004 tsunami that ended up killing over 230,000 people. 2 of the feet have been identified as belonging to people with mental illnesses. Mr. Fonseca said that he believed the feet belonged to people who committed suicide by jumping off the bridge, and then their bodies later decomposed. What do you believe? This case is most likely one of the most famous talked about unsolved mysteries. On September 7th, Tupac Shakur attended the Mike Tyson fight against Bruce Seldon. He was with his unarmed bodyguards and Suge Knight, who was the CEO of Death Row Records, the label that Tupac Shakur was signed to. They were caught on surveillance camera beating on Orlando Anderson in the lobby of MGM Grand. It was said that Orlando Anderson was part of the Southside Crips gang. Tupac left in Suge Knight's car with his bodyguards following in cars behind them. While Suge Knight stopped at a traffic light, a white Cadillac pulled up on Suge Knight's car and shot 14 times. Tupac was said to have tried to jump into the back seat when the shots were being fired, but was hit 4 times. One of these 14 bullets grazed Suge Knight in the head with the bullet fragments. Suge quickly drove off, where they were later stopped by Bike Patrol, who then contacted paramedics. Tupac died from his wounds on September 13th at the age of 25. Now, this is the mysterious part. No one was ever charged for his murder, and there's a lot of conspiracies that surround this case. On the night Tupac died, his bodyguards were unarmed, something they said never happened before. It raised questions: why were they unarmed when attending a high-profile event? Some people believe that this was a planned attack by his own people, and that's why his bodyguards were told not to have a weapon. Some believe Suge Knight ordered the kill because there are rumours that Tupac was going to leave his record label. Some have said that the reason the police didn't charge no one was because the police were involved in the kill. One strange fact was that there was a key witness, Yafe Fula, who was in the car behind Tupac. He told police that he could identify who murdered Tupac. Police never even interviewed him. 2 months later, Fula himself was murdered. Another theory was that Orlando Anderson killed Tupac, the man Tupac beat at the MGM Grand just a couple of hours earlier. He might have got his revenge for his beating. Another popular theory was that Biggie Smalls and Puff Daddy ordered the kill. There are so many theories, but this case is still unsolved. Who do you believe killed Tupac Shakur? Hope you enjoy mysterious videos such as this, and if you do, then please give it a like and subscribe.